afternoon. I'm Victoria Marshall with the latest news from the Washington Watch News Desk. In international news, Secretary of State Antony Blinken has told U.S. allies that Iran and Hezbollah could attack Israel as early as Monday. Iran and Hezbollah have vowed to respond to Israel's assassinations of their top political and military leaders.
We are at a critical moment for the region, and it is important that all parties take steps over the coming days to refrain from escalation and calm tensions. Escalation is in no one's interest. It's not in the interest of any one country, it's not in the interest of the region, and it's certainly not in the interest of the millions of civilians who just want to live their lives free from violence and conflict.
Blinken's warning comes as the U.S. sends warships and fighter jets to the Middle East to boost its forces in the region in preparation of a possible Iranian attack against Israel. Hezbollah terrorists say they launched a drone attack against Israel today as the country braces amid Iranian threats of a much larger assault. The U.S. and the United Kingdom urged their citizens over the weekend to get out of Lebanon due to the growing conflict. And in economic news, the U.S. stock market plunged Monday morning, reflecting fears that the U.S. economy might be headed for a recession. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 2.3% after the opening bell. The Nasdaq Composite plunged 4%. The S&P 500 fell by 3.1%. The decline highlights the level of worry among investors after Friday's jobs report showed unemployment rising and job growth slowing more than expected. The economy added just 114,000 jobs in July, according to the Department of Labor, significantly below the 180,000 economists forecasted.
People surrounding Harris, if you're in the stock market, if you care about your paycheck, you go with Trump. If that's what you do.
You do?
Yeah, well, he wants to cut your taxes.
Oh, he wants to cut taxes.
Your taxes.
And turning our attention to the 2024 election, Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to announce her running mate tomorrow ahead of a rally in Philadelphia, fueling speculation that she will choose Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Pennsylvania is a key swing state. Other contenders are Arizona Senator Mark Kelly and Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. A new CBS poll found Harris and Trump are tied across the key battleground states, suggesting Harris erased Trump's previous lead over Biden. Harris has not given any interviews or hosted a press conference since President Biden dropped out of the race. Meanwhile, former President Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, is responding to Harris and her Democratic allies, calling him weird.
And now, Kamala Harris says we're weird. Well, Kamala, I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about some things that are weird. We think it's weird that Democrats want to put sexually explicit books in toddlers' libraries. We think it's weird that the far left wants to allow biological males to beat the living crap out of women in boxing. We think it's weird for a presidential candidate to bail convicted rapists and murderers out of prison, and that's what Kamala Harris did.
And finally, Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch says the influx of federal regulations is impairing Americans' freedoms. In a sit-down interview with Fox News' Shannon Bream over the weekend, Gorsuch said the United States has too many laws.
Some professors say that there are now so many federal laws on the books, crimes, that every American over the age of 18 commits one felony a day. And that's happened in my lifetime. 1970 to present, we've seen maybe a doubling in the number of federal crimes on the books. And that just counts what's in the code, the U.S. code passed by Congress. And that's just the tip of the iceberg because federal agencies have been busy too.
Those are today's headlines. Up next is Washington Watch with Tony Perkins. We'll see you tomorrow with more news.
from the heart of our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., bringing compelling interviews, insightful analysis, taking you beyond the headlines and sound bites into conversations with our nation's leaders and newsmakers, all from a biblical worldview. Sitting in for Tony is today's host, Jody Heiss.
Well, good afternoon, and welcome to this Monday edition of Washington Watch. And I will say this, with both chambers of Congress out of town, Tony is going to be out of the host chair for a bit, and it is my deep and sincere honor to be filling in for him while he's away, but also thrilled to have you on board with us as well. We've got a lot coming your way today. Let me give you some of the highlights that we'll be discussing. Tensions, of course, remain high throughout the Middle East. This comes less than a week from the killing of a Hamas leader in Tehran and a Hezbollah commander in Beirut. And the supreme leader of Iran has issued a vow of revenge that, of course, has sparked fears in the region and broader as it relates to a potential multi-front war for Israel.
We are at a critical moment for the region, and it is important that all parties take steps over the coming days to refrain from escalation and calm tensions. Escalation is in no one's interest. It's not in the interest of any one country, it's not in the interest of the region, and it's certainly not in the interest of the millions of civilians who just want to live their lives free from violence and conflict.
Well, that was State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller earlier today. I will be getting an update from Texas Congressman Nathaniel Moran, who is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, in just a few moments. And there is stunning data that has been uncovered by Texas Congressman Chip Roy's office that reveals the bias of the federal government in using the FACE Act to target pro-life Americans. Congressman Roy will be joining me a little bit later in the program to break all of that down for us. And Democrats are continuing to gush over the candidacy of Kamala Harris, who they claim was not the border czar, but that she should be credited for supposedly reducing migration flows into the U.S.
Kamala Harris has always been for border security. Today, border crossings are lower at the southwest border than they were at the end of the Trump presidency. There is a contrast between Democrats, Kamala Harris, who's serious about border security, and Republicans who are not.
Wow. That was Democrat Senator Chris Murphy yesterday on Fox News Sunday. Quite frankly, he was making some claims that even an amateur fact checker could refute. But nonetheless, he made those. And, well, one part is true, I'll say. There certainly is a clear contrast between the Biden-Harris administration and the Trump administration. In fact, an internal audit at the Department of Homeland Security just revealed a massive abuse of the Biden administration, their huge parole program that flew migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela into the United States. It was so bad that even the Biden administration has now suspended that program. But what can be done regarding all the migrants that are already here in this country by corrupt means? Well, we'll be having that conversation with Texas Congressman Brian Babin a little bit later in the program. And it's hard to believe, folks, the 2024 election is now just 3 months away. Unbelievable. 3 months away, and there are enormous concerns over election integrity, especially concerns regarding illegal migrants on voter rolls and fraudulent ballot harvesting. I'll be talking about all of that with attorney Cleta Mitchell, who is the founder of the Election Integrity Network. And speaking of elections, underscore this. Many of you have already been asking about the iVoter Guides, our team. And iVoter Guides have been hard at work trying to finalize the voter guides for your benefit. It will cover national, state, and in many instances, local elections, so you have the ability to look at the different issues and the different candidates. If you'd like to receive updates on those guides as they are finalized, you can do so by texting the word GUIDE, G-U-I-D-E. Text the word GUIDE to 67742. And we will keep you posted on the development of those iVoter guides and when you can get one. So we've got a lot coming your way today. You don't want to miss a bit of it. Of course, our website is tonyperkins.com. As always, we encourage you to keep that handy, as tons of resources are available there for you. So much. tonyperkins.com. All right, let's jump into the program for this evening. There's deep uncertainty throughout Israel today, absolutely, but even throughout the entire world, as a threat of a potential attack from Iran or its regional allies remains extremely high. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said yesterday that though his country is in a multi-front war against Iran's evil axis, it is prepared for any scenario, both offensively and defensively. Remarks that were yet again repeated today.
Prime Minister reiterates, and we say to our enemies, we will respond and we will exact a heavy price for any act of aggression against us from whatever quarter.
Well, that was Israeli government spokesman David Mincer. And joining me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Nathaniel Moran. He serves on many committees in the House, including the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and the Judiciary Committee. He represents the 1st Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Moran, welcome back to the program. Always great to have you.
Hi, Jody. It's great to be with you today to discuss this very important issue that's going on in the Middle East.
Yeah, this is critical. It's a situation that we're all monitoring and staying on top of. Well, you serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee. What can you tell us?
Well, here's what I can tell you at the outset is it would be a mistake for Iran to underestimate the will of the people of Israel to win this war and to underestimate the support that the United States is going to give to Israel to make sure that that endeavor occurs as it should. There is simply no substitute for victory in this particular instance. Israel's run a good race so far. Iran, if they want to challenge further, that would be a mistake on their part because the U.S. is solidly going to be in Israel's corner as it should be. Now, the U.S. Has not been as supportive as it should be with Israel in the past couple of months to the degree it should be. But I think that will change if Iran tips its hand and goes further.
Well, how concerned are you about this whole thing potentially becoming a multi-front war for Israel? Are they prepared for that?
They are prepared for that. I have no doubt that they're prepared for that. And I'm not fearful about this situation because I know that the outcome here is going to be in Israel's favor. I think Iran barks a lot about what they're going to do. But the truth is, I don't think they can back it up the way that they say they would. The key here, though, is we've got to make sure that in the future they don't get to a place where they have nuclear capabilities, which they're close to. So if Iran strikes in this instance, even if it's a symbolic strike, I think the U.S. needs to act swiftly and firmly to undercut Iran's ability to get a nuclear weapon, because if Iran gets a nuclear weapon, it changes the game both for Israel and the United States.
Yeah, and I'm sure you saw last week that they are claiming that they have some nuclear warheads. How much of that is bark, like you say, and how much of that is reality, we don't know right now. But they're certainly saying, I think it's potentially could be a scare tactic directed towards Israel. But nonetheless, as you say, they at least are close to having the capabilities, if not already. I did notice that the Israel Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, he made the statement that in essence said that if their enemies dare to attack them, that there will be a heavy price to pay. That's consistent with the message of Israel all along. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's perfectly appropriate. It's a proportional response because the threat against Israel as it grows has to be stamped out so that it does not regionalize. And there's a number of Arab partners in the region that do not want to see it regionalized. They don't want to see the escalation. And I agree with the National Security Council deputy advisor who used the terms de-escalation, deterrence, and defense of Israel. He used those terms in his press conference yesterday or today. I think those are good goals to go after. We want de-escalation. We want deterrence there, but we're going to defend Israel and we're going to help them win this war against terrorism in their backyard. if Iran continues to press. So they should take note that we're not going away, and neither is Israel. And I think that some of the other Arab countries that really want peace and stability in the region are gonna take that same position as well.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. You know, all of this, Congressman Moran, seems to me to be a scenario that could have all been avoided, should have all been avoided. It's as though Israel could potentially end up paying a price for the Biden administration's continued weakness on the world stage. Would you agree with that?
Jody, you and I have talked about that, and that weakness on the world stage is exactly what gave rise to this aggression by Iran and its proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas and the Houthis throughout the past 10 months. We saw it start in the Afghanistan withdrawal. We saw it continued with the way that the administration did not respond properly to the balloon gate matter, and to so many other foreign and military advances across the world by totalitarian regimes. Every one of them knows they can do what they want to do without severe consequence by the U.S. Now, Iran and its proxies stepped into it when they went directly against Israel, and Israel fought back hard as they should, proportionally hard as they should. And the U.S., I hope, is catching up to the understanding that the only way you're going to get peace, stability, and prosperity in that region for everybody, which is what we want, the only way to do it is by acts of strength. And we have not shown that so far.
Yeah, peace through strength. I mean, there's no question about that. If I can, Congressman, switch gears on you real quickly on this. There's a new report from Judicial Watch that found that the U.S., supposedly mistakenly, but nonetheless, the U.S. has given some $239 million of taxpayer funds to the Taliban since the Biden administration's botched withdrawal in Afghanistan. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it is infuriating to hear this news, and it's because the United States simply did not follow its own established procedures for vetting individuals and entities that were receiving these funds that were intended to go overseas. And because they did not follow those procedures as they had written them out, then the vetting process failed and this money ended up in the incorrect hands. And it's shameful when you see that happen, especially when we've turned our back on people that have helped us over in Afghanistan and other areas in the world. We've turned our back on them, our allies. And now here it is, unintentionally, we're helping people through our own negligence. And that's simply infuriating.
It's unbelievable that we have that kind of money and no vetting to see where it's going. Is anybody getting fired for this, by the way?
I don't think so, but they should. They certainly should. But I think, quite honestly, there's a lot of people in the administration that should have been fired by now for a number of things. I know you're going to be talking about the border throughout this hour. And at the top of that list is Kamala Harris, who has failed in her job to make sure
Absolutely.
the border got secured. And so there's a lot of the administration that need to be fired for the negligent and sometimes intentional disregard of the law and actually doing the right thing for our nation.
Well, that opportunity is coming 3 months from now to fire a bunch of them. Thank you, Congressman Nathaniel Moran. Always great to have you on the program. All right, friends, after the break, Congressman Chip Roy is going to be joining me with some stunning data that his office discovered regarding a law that has been used to target pro-life activists. Unbelievable. We'll bring it all your way right after the break, so stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
Download the new Stand Firm app for Apple and Android phones today and join a wonderful community of fellow believers. We've created a special place for you to access news from a biblical perspective, read and listen to daily devotionals, pray for current events, and more. Share the Stand Firm app with your friends, family, and church members, and stand firm everywhere you go.
Hello, I'm Jody Heiss, president of FRC Action. Here in America, we thank God for the right to vote, and we can all agree on the importance of this upcoming election. Many of us want to support candidates who share our values, but we're not comfortable supporting the big national political organizations. Well, we have a solution for supporting candidates through FRC Action's Faith, Family, and Freedom Fund. Being a super PAC, It allows for unlimited individual and corporate donations, so we can endorse and fund campaigns for people who share our values. By giving to this fund, we're able to pull all of our contributions together and support and endorse like-minded candidates. That's how we move the needle. So let's be the best stewards possible and get the most out of our political contributions by uniting our efforts. For more information or to contribute, visit faithfamilyfreedomfund.org. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
All of us are born with the desire to find truth and meaning. Where did I come from? What happens when I die? While our answers to these questions may divide us, we are united in our need for the freedom to answer life's biggest questions and make life's biggest decisions for ourselves. That's why religious freedom matters for everyone. Religious freedom matters because the powerful have long wanted to control those who are less powerful. Religious freedom matters because the freedom of those who are different is often threatened by those who believe different is dangerous. At the Center for Religious Liberty at Family Research Council, we promote religious freedom for everyone because the only alternative is religious freedom for no one. We encourage Americans and the American government to engage and advocate for the persecuted, and they do. We work every day to bring good news to the afflicted, to proclaim liberty to captives and freedom to prisoners. We do it because that's what Jesus does. We work to give freedom to others because we ourselves have been set free.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm your host today, sitting in for Tony, Jody Heiss. Glad to be with you, and thank you for joining us. All right, data from the Department of Justice reveals that the Biden administration has used what's known as the FACE Act, which is a Clinton-era law. It stands for the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. But they are using that FACE Act to target pro-life activists, even though the intent of the law is to protect pro-life pregnancy centers and houses of worship, as well as abortion clinics. But in the past 30 years since the FACE Act passed in 1994, and for those of you who are watching, we have a graphic we want to put up here. But since 1994, there have been approximately 211 FACE Act cases. Now catch this. Of the 211 cases, 205 of those cases, that's 97%, have been used against pro-life activists. Well, joining me now to discuss this by phone is Congressman Chip Roy. It is his office that uncovered this data. He serves on several committees, including the Judiciary Committee and the Rules Committee. Congressman Chip Roy is one of those who is all over the place in Washington, D.C. He represents the 21st Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Roy, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Jody, great to be on. I hope you're doing well, my brother.
I am doing extremely well. Hope you are also. Thank you for joining us. All right, listen, the statistics don't lie. And your office has found this data that is stunning, shocking, maddening. But from 1994 to 2024, there were 205 cases brought against pro-lifers, only 6 brought against pro-abortion activists. Your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I think it points out very clearly that Christopher Wray, when he was in front of the House Judiciary Committee, and he tried to dismiss my concerns when I raised the question about the application of the FACE Act to pro-life Americans, and that it was being used as to be weaponized against them. And he dismissed it, first of all, when I brought up the case as I think you all know the case, a 75-year-old grandmother who was unfortunately had the FACE Act applied to her and is now facing 2 years in jail, going to prison literally this week, I believe, in Texas. The fact is that that's something that the FBI director said he didn't even know who Paulette Harlow was, who is the 75-year-old grandmother. And And he was like, I'm not even familiar with that case. But then he tried to turn around and say, oh, but don't worry, we've been applying this, equally. And he tried to cite some general data, but didn't give any numbers. The fact is, we've gotten this very specific set of data that, as you just pointed out, 97% of these cases have been used against pro-life activists. And to be clear, Jody, not just conservatives, not just pro-life evangelicals or something. There are some progressive activists that have also had this be applied to them and get jail time. And I think that's something that people need to understand, that this is the religion to the left, and they don't actually even care to a degree who it gets applied to.
It just sounds to me that this is it's like prosecutions on steroids. I mean, this is what a weaponized government looks like, isn't it?
It is. Let's consider the progressive that I just talked about. I got to know these particular activists, Lauren Handy. She was one of the ones that you will remember in the DC-5 that was uncovering the extent to which they had evidence of these aborted babies and the bodies of these aborted babies that they were able to retrieve. And Lauren is the one who's now facing and has been sentenced to 4 years and 9 months in jail. There's allegations about what happened when they went into the clinic and that maybe they pushed somebody down and so forth. But again, these are misdemeanor type offenses. Same thing with Paulette Harlow, the 75-year-old grandmother who's not in great health. Her husband worries about her. If there's a misdemeanor offense here for blocking access to the clinic, no matter what you and I think about the clinic, okay. I mean, we understand that an application of that law and the rule of law, but putting aside the fact that we're standing up for life in the first place, but at the end of the day, they're trying to weaponize this specifically to put pro-life people in jail for a long time. It's coming to a theater near you, and it won't just be abortion, y'all. I mean, let's be very real. It's about religious liberty. It's about parents like Scott Smith in Loudoun County. It's about Mark Houck and FBI, who was also, that was a pro-life issue. But there are multiple issues where this will be applied to you, whether you don't bake a cake for a gay wedding or whether it's some sort of transgender issue. This is all going to be applied against you.
Against anyone who disagrees with this radical left-wing agenda. They are weaponizing the government to attack their political opponents, to destroy them. I look at this Biden administration of the 211 cases over 30 years now. 55 of those have taken place under the Biden administration. This FACE Act has been around for 30 years. 25% of all of this these cases have happened just in the 3.5 years of the Biden administration. This is it's a vicious attack. It is a vicious rise on attacks against those political opponents in every way. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, no, that is 100% right, Jody. And I think it's important to kind of pull up and then look at this from 50,000 feet and just understand where we are in America. Because these patriots who are standing up and doing what they believe is right and exercising their First Amendment rights and exercising their rights to try to protect those who need protection, they're facing the consequences of that under our legal system. But when that legal system is being used in a weaponized fashion, okay, it turns it on its head. It's the destruction of the rule of law. When I was a prosecutor, you had to make judgment calls. If you were going to go prosecute, for example, a felon in possession of a firearm, and you had a gang member with a whole laundry list of a rap sheet that was terrible and moving drugs and killing people and, all that assault, you had no problem putting that guy in jail when you catch him with a firearm and he's a felon and he's in possession, right?
We've got about 30 seconds, Congressman.
But what if you run across a woman who had a shotgun in her closet and she happened to be a felon because she once smoked pot, and she uses it to defend herself? I'm not going to prosecute that case. That's this. They're doing it on purpose. They're doing it because they want pro-lifers to be in jail, and everybody listening to this needs to know it.
Congressman Chip Roy, always an honor to have you on the program. Thanks to you and your office for revealing this to all of us. We appreciate it so much. All right, friends, after the break, we're going to be talking about a suspended mass parole program that's going to get in your craw. Stay tuned, coming your way right after the break.
Where there was freedom, there was the idea that individuals are created equal. It's true that all ideas have consequences, but we're less aware that all consequences are the fruit of ideas. Before there was murder, there was hate. Before there was a Holocaust, there was the belief by some people that other people are undesirable. Our beliefs determine our behavior, and our beliefs about life's biggest questions determine our worldview. Where did I come from? Who decides what is right and wrong? What happens when I die? Our answers to these questions explain why people see the world so differently. Debates about abortion are really disagreements about where life gets its value. Debates over sexuality and gender and marriage are really disagreements about whether the rules are made by us or for us. What we think of as political debates are often much more than that. They are disagreements about the purpose of our lives and the source of truth. As Christians, our goal must be to think biblically about everything. Our goal is to help you see beyond red and blue, left and right, to see the battle of ideas at the root of it all. Our goal is to equip Christians with a biblical worldview and help them advance and defend the faith in their families, communities, and the public square. Cultural renewal doesn't begin with campaigns and elections. It begins with individuals turning from lies to truth. But that won't happen if people can't recognize a lie and don't believe truth exists. We want to help you see the spiritual war behind the political war, the truth claims behind the press release, and the forest from the trees.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Washington Watch. I am your host, Jody Heiss. Glad to have you with us. All right, we are trying right now to get Congressman Brian Babin from Texas. Wanted to talk about a massive and widespread fraudulent program that the Biden administration has been using, and they've, by the way, at least temporarily suspended it right now, where they're flying in migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. But the abuses, so much fraud has taken place with this, misuse of Social Security numbers, in fact, some of them from dead people, improper addresses that were being filed, all sorts of things. And now we have tons of these people who are now in the United States. And we're trying to figure out what in the world do we do with them. In fact, some of those addresses, the improper addresses, one address was used between 124 times and 739 times. All these people, same address. Yeah, right. It's just stunning what's been going on. And all these people have come, so many of them, with doctored or at least suspicious forms and otherwise. So joining me now to discuss this is Congressman Brian Babin. He serves on several committees in the House of Representatives. He's also the co-chair of the Congressional Border Security Caucus, which I had the honor of serving with him on that. He represents the 36th District of Texas. Congressman Babin, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to have you.
It's always good to be with you, Jody, my old friend from we're classmates. We miss you.
That's right. That's right. We came in together. Miss you as well. But thank you for coming on the program with us. All right, look, we've got a lot of folks who have raised suspicions that this program that has temporarily been suspended, that it was ripe from the beginning to be abused. What is your reaction now that an audit has actually proven that these suspicions and concerns all along were in fact true?
Well, it's just like I tell people, you know, a conspiracy theory, generally, you know, sometimes from conspiracy theories to truth, these days under this Biden-Harris administration is only a matter of a few hours before it pans out to be true. But yes, this thing has definitely turned out to be what we all thought it was. It was corrupt from the very beginning. They've used, the Biden and Harris administration have used every single tool imaginable and available to them, manipulating, bypassing every law on the books to funnel illegal aliens into our great country, our beloved country. And I mean, all you have to do is just look at the numbers. 400,000 inadmissible aliens have utilized the administration's unlawful Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan mass parole program, better known as the CHNV program. More than 200,000 of these individuals traveled to the United States between the months of January 2023 and August of 2023. And 1.6 million inadmissible aliens are awaiting travel authorizations through this CHNV program right now. Quite frankly, all I can tell you is that the DHS knows what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing, and they have even admitted that these individuals they do not have a legal basis to enter our country before being paroled through this program. And
so
this is a quote. All individuals paroled into the United States are, by definition, inadmissible, including those paroled under the CHNV process. There you go.
Wow. So the question is, what do we do with all these people who are here illegally? They came here not only illegally, but abusing the situation. And the Biden administration's helping all that happen. What happens now with all those individuals who are here?
Well, I'll tell you. They're sucking us dry. We're spending billions of dollars of taxpayers' hard-earned money to medicate, incarcerate, to educate these people that are coming in, and quite frankly, many of these are victimizing innocent Americans through violent crime, through gang activity. We've seen some, especially Venezuela. Venezuela they've got this new gang that we recently has come to our attention called the Tren del Arauto. I think that's the way you pronounce it. Tren del Aragua. That's what it is. And they have teamed up in many respects with the MS-13 gangsters. And they're victimizing Americans right and left. Drugs are pouring into our country. 110,000 plus Americans are dying each year from the drugs.
Congressman, let me ask you this. We've only got a little over a minute left, but I want to relay this to you. Democrat Senator Chris Murphy, I played some of this earlier, but he was on Fox News Sunday yesterday, and he made the false claim, but one that basically said that the border crossings are lower at the southwest border than they were at the end of the Trump presidency. Your response to that? And in fact, he said Democrats are serious about protecting the border, Republicans are not. Your reaction to that?
My reaction is an abject lie. Jody, you know how these people operate. Don't go by what they say, go by what they do. We're closing in on an election, a national election, probably the most important election of our lifetimes, maybe even the history of our country. Do we turn this corner away from socialism and wokeism to a Marxist country, or do we go back to freedom? And I can tell you, they want to make it look like they're doing something that is effective, and they're not. All this is a show. Don't take this hook, line, and sinker. That's what they're hoping, that people will just take their word for it. But I can tell you, things maybe will temporarily get better, but not after the election. The Biden-Harris administration could care. What's that?
Got to leave it there, my friend.
Okay.
We're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us, as always, on Washington Watch. Friends, stay tuned. Right after the break, Cleta Mitchell will be joining me on election integrity issues. You don't want to miss what's coming your way right after the break. Stay tuned.
Join us October 3rd through the 6th as we gather with spiritually active, governance-engaged conservatives from across America at the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit in Washington, D.C. We'll pray for our nation, engage in government and culture, and stand for biblical truth alongside Christian leaders, worldview experts, and government officials. We'll discuss important issues like the sanctity of life, religious freedom, protecting students, strengthening families, praying for our nation, and how you can impact America's future from a biblical worldview. Our nation stands at a critical juncture, and we must ensure that the issues impacting faith, family, and freedom are understood and advanced. Register now at PrayVoteStand.org That's PrayVoteStand.org.
Jesus said in John 15, "These things I've spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full." In 2024, in these divided and uncertain times, how can this be possible? By abiding in Him through His Word. At Family Research Council, we want to help you do that, which is the reason for the Stand on the Word Bible reading plan. In just 10 to 15 minutes each day, you will have read the entire Bible in just 2 years. But more importantly, you will be abiding in Him daily. Find our Bible reading plan at frc.org/Bible. And join Tony Perkins each weekday for a 10-minute devotional inspired by the daily reading and designed to encourage you on this journey through the Bible. Listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And remember, the grass withers and the flower fades, but the word of our God will stand forever.
Research has found that there are 59 million American adults who are a lot like you. There are millions of people around the country who are born again, deeply committed to practicing their faith, and believe the Bible is the reliable Word of God. But that's not all. They're also engaged in our government. They're voters. They're more likely to be involved in their community, and they're making a difference in elections. The problem is that a lot of them feel alone too. We want to change that. FRC wants to connect these 59 million Americans to speak the truth together, no matter the cost. If you want to learn more about this group and what it means to be a spiritually active, governance-engaged conservative, or if you want to find out if you are one of these sage cons yourself, join us. Go to frc.org/SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more. That's SAGECON, SageCon, to learn more.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to Washington Watch. I'm your host, Jody Heiss, sitting in today for Tony. Glad to have you joining us as well. All right, just a quick reminder, we all need to get involved and urge President Biden, as well as the other presidential candidates, to stop holding up aid to Israel. They are under a massive threat right now that could not only potentially impact them, but the entire world. And it should be a priority of the current chief executive and every single presidential candidate to be loud and clear about their support for Israel. So we're asking you to help us urge them to be loud and clear for their support for Israel. And to do so, we're asking you to sign a petition that we have that is going both to President Biden as well as all the presidential candidates, urging them to support Israel. So to do so, to sign on, you've got two options. You can go to frcaction.org/support, or you can simply text the word support to 67742. So again, we thank you for joining us in that and trying to put a little pressure on those individuals. All right. We mentioned it earlier. Hard to believe the 2024 elections are now just 3 months away. And we have tremendous concerns in the mix of it all regarding election integrity. And those concerns are intensifying. In fact, just this month already, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed a previous decision and is now going to allow Arizona residents without proof of citizenship to vote in this upcoming election. And all this comes as the Biden administration has allowed millions of migrants to pour into our country, as you well know. And so all of this now is ripe for exploitation. And the left, and I've heard them personally say this, they claim that none of this is happening. Illegals are not voting. So what do we need to be worried about? That's what they want to say. Well, let's talk about this. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Cleta Mitchell. She's a senior legal fellow at the Conservative Partnership Institute. She's also a former member of the advisory board for the Election Assistance Commission, and she founded the Election Integrity Network and the Foundation for Accountability and Integrity in Elections Fund, or also known as FAIR. Cleta, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to have you.
Great to see you, Jody. Thank you.
All right. First of all, let's go to the ruling last Thursday by the Ninth Circuit. When I first heard this, Cleta, I've got to admit my jaw dropped. It's like, you have got to be kidding me. After what Arizona had gone through to try to protect illegals from voting, the Ninth Circuit just reverses it all. Tell us about it.
Well, poor Arizona. They've been trying for 20 years to be able to get documentary proof of citizenship in order to be able to register to vote in that state, literally starting in the early 2000s. And there is a statute in Arizona that it's on the books in Arizona that you have to provide proof of citizenship, documentary proof of citizenship when you register to vote. And they asked the Election Assistance Commission about a decade ago to add that to the federal form for use in Arizona, because Congress, in its infinite wisdom, 31 years ago, passed what we call the Motor Voter Bill that requires every state to accept and use this federal form for voter registration. Arizona wanted to make sure that the form was consistent with its state law requiring documentary proof of citizenship. However, the Supreme Court of the United States said that the Election Assistance Commission didn't have the authority to do that because Congress didn't put it in the language of the statute. So what the Supreme Court ordered as a remedy 11 years ago, it was for Arizona to be able to have two separate voter rolls. If you want to vote in state elections, you have to provide documentary proof of citizenship. But if you don't have documentary proof of citizenship, guess what? You can register to vote on the federal only list, which means if you don't prove citizenship, you can get a ballot for president, U.S. Senate, and U.S. House. And the Arizona legislature, it is unbelievable. And the Arizona legislature came in this year or last year and tried to strengthen the provisions to get back at the issue of requiring citizenship proof to register to vote in any election. A lower court judge, federal court judge, Obama appointee, denied that, but stayed the decision. It went up to the Ninth Circuit, and the panel at the Ninth Circuit said, well, actually, we're not going to stay that pending the appeal, so that you can, in the meanwhile, continue to ask for documentary proof of citizenship. But then the full panel of the full en banc court in the Ninth Circuit just last week said, no, you can't. So they reimposed a stay. I presume, and I actually was thinking about this morning, that RNC is one of the parties in the state party of Georgia. I presume they're going to take an immediate appeal. I hope that they'll move for emergency consideration by the U.S. Supreme Court. And I wish that the Trump campaign would also weigh in, and a lot of people would weigh in and ask the court to keep Arizona from sending ballots to people who are not confirmed to be U.S. citizens. That is really, Jody, if you want to pick the number one thing I'm worried about for 2024, that's it. And it's not just in Arizona, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
It is. It absolutely is. And that's, that's a major topic of mine as well. We've got to, every illegal vote takes away a vote from a citizen. And that is just absolutely unacceptable. You know, I was in so many of the hearings during my time in Congress, hearing the Democrats say this type of stuff is not happening. We already have laws that say it's illegal for an illegal individual to vote in federal elections. It's not happening. Well, it's also a law not to speed. But all you have to do is go on any interstate, and no one is driving the speed limit. And so the argument that they have is so bogus. How do we know that this is, in fact, an issue, despite the fact that there are laws on the books?
Well, I think that we know that it's an issue because we know that there are non-citizens on the voter rolls. And one of the things that you have to remember is that this has happened gradually. And the laws regarding, the Help America Vote Act was passed in after the 2000 presidential election. So it was passed in 2002. And it says that every state, there's a federal law, it says every state must verify identity and residency of a voter before adding that person to the voter rolls. What's missing from that list? Citizenship. Now, and because nobody could envision a time when we would have massive disregard of our border laws, our immigration laws, by the existing administration. And so what we have is this massive number of illegals coming across the border. We have laws on the books against that. They're here illegally, but somehow we're supposed to imagine that the same people who came across the border illegally are somehow going to say, oh, but it's illegal for me to register and vote. I mean, come on, man, as to quote a person who is supposed to be our president, but we're not sure if he is or not. But so the two things that the federal law requires is confirming identity and residency for registration. Well, guess what? You know how you do that under this federal law? Driver's license number and social security number. Every state issues driver's licenses to non-citizens, every state. 19 states in the District of Columbia issue driver's licenses to illegals. So what does that verify? It doesn't verify citizenship. And the Social Security Administration issues social security numbers to non-citizens because they are supposed to be working with work permits. If they're here illegally, this administration has been handing out all kinds of exemptions and statutory categories to these illegals, asylees, parolees. I don't even know all these terms, but they can get social security numbers. So the only two ways that we have for verifying citizenship they don't verify citizenship at all. So we have formed, Jody, the Only Citizens Vote Coalition. It's a national coalition. Go to the website, www.onlycitizensvotecoalition.com, and look at the website, sign up to receive the newsletter. We send out a weekly newsletter. We've created a national working group on Only Citizens Vote that meets by Zoom every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It's free. We're trying to get people activated. We've created toolkits and resources, and we're going to have a national week in September to shine bright light on the National Only Citizens Vote Week. Because I'm telling you what, we have got to create essentially a National Citizens Watch at our local DMVs. That's where they're going to get their driver's licenses and ID cards, and they're getting those, and then they are getting registered to vote. And once they get on those rolls, you have no way of knowing whether they're voting. When the left says that doesn't happen, how do they know? You don't have an administration that will begin to try to enforce the law. How do they know? They don't know.
They know. That's why the borders have been open.
They do know.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point. That's why the borders have been wide open for the last 3.5 years. And there's a lot of chatter in the midst of all of this about getting migrants on the voter rolls for ballot harvesting. I mean, that's part of the equation in all of this as well, isn't it?
Well, yes, because remember, when we talk about harvesting, we're talking about you have to have planted something. And so what they planted I believe, they planted these left-wing non-governmental organizations, including church groups. Catholic Charities is number one. Lutheran Social Services is number two. They're very left-wing. They don't believe in our immigration laws. They're helping all of these migrants across the border and shepherding them around the country. And certainly, as I say, when you go into the driver's license agency to get a driver's license, these agents in these agencies have been told for 30 years they have to register everybody who comes in to see them to get a driver's license. And we have a number of states, Michigan, Georgia, for example, other states. When you get a driver's license, you are automatically registered to vote unless you opt out. So, we're finding pockets all over the country of these registrations.
Absolutely. And Kalita, you mentioned Georgia. Let me just throw this out. Look, you and I both know we've had conversations. We've been in meetings where this has just been the topic. But this upcoming election is very likely going to come down to just a few thousand votes in some of these swing states. But you mentioned Georgia. There's some estimated 339,000 non-citizens living in Georgia, and this is a state, my home state, where President Biden won 2020 by fewer than 12,000 votes. So give us your perspective on how little really it takes to swing an election.
Well, it takes just a very few. And in fact, there is a website called justfacts.com. And this is run by a researcher who does all this research. And he says on a conservative, very conservative basis, that 10 to 12% of those who are in this country who are non-citizens, and that includes both people here legally and illegally, because we have many, many people here who are here legally, and we have students who have student visas, we have people with work visas, we have other permanent residents, people who have a green card, plus all these illegals. If you say 10, how many are there? We hear different estimates. The Department of Homeland Security says they don't know how many there are, but let's take the estimates I read a week ago, 22 million. If 10% of those 22 million actually register and vote, I mean, some small percentage, how many does it take to flip Utah, which has mainly mail-in voting? How many does it take to flip North Dakota, which doesn't have voter registration? People just show up and vote. And how are they supposed to deal with that if there's this influx of illegals or non-citizens who just show up and vote?
Absolutely. And I'll just say this, Cleta. Yeah, in my home state, again, of Georgia, of that 339,000, 14% of them are registered to vote. That's according to a study that came out this week. All right, we've only got a little over about a minute and a half. How is this coming November going to be different from 2020? Is there a silver lining? Is there hope going into this election?
Well, look, I mean, I've been working on this for 3 years, and sometimes I think, oh, what have we done? But we have so many people around the country who've worked so hard on trying to clean voter rolls and all that kind of thing. And I do urge people to sign up and be a poll observer and sign up to be an election worker. We need workers who are not just paid by left-wing groups. But I think that I really do believe that it is going to take all of us getting everyone we know to vote. Everyone we know, because honestly, I think President Trump has to be, I'm a Trump supporter, and I think he has to win by such big margins that they can't they can't manipulate the outcome. And so the closer it is, the harder it is for us to overcome the shenanigans. But number one thing, let's all work hard at getting our friends and neighbors and family members to register, to vote, and to look around and basically create a national neighborhood watch. Do we see pockets of illegals registering at driver's license agencies? Raise the stink about it in your local communities.
Yes.
It's just going to take all of us being very loud. And it's hard sometimes because the left is so loud. They're so loud.
Well, Cleta, we say it around here at FRC all the time. Pray, vote, stand. That's what it's going to take. Cleta Mitchell, founder of Election Integrity Network and senior legal fellow at the Conservative Partnership Institute. Always an honor to have you. Thank you so much for coming on the program, and your expertise in this is enormous. Thank you. All right, friends, of course, you also know that I had a book published on this very topic a few months ago. It's called Sacred Trust, Election Integrity, and the Will of the People. It's available at Amazon or wherever you get your books. I certainly encourage you to grab a copy. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you tomorrow right here on Washington Watch.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit TonyPerkins.com.